For this video we are going to go through view targets. The first thing you need to do is select the camera for your project and go over to the properties window and scroll to the orthographic section and set orthographic to true. Use orthographic size to true and manage orthographic for resolution to true. Doing this will get the green box to appear in the designer window. Anything you want to appear on screen will need to be inside this green box. Your orthographic camera is managed to 16:9. Anything inside this will be visible to the user no matter what the size of the screen is. Everything inside the green box is visible at all times on a device. What you can then do is see what it looks like at different aspect ratios by going to the View Targets button on the top bar and going View Targets, Orthographic, pick your device and then pick the aspect ratio. When you change the aspect ratio, you will see in the properties window that your new view targets have been applied. Those are the attributes for the particular view target. As you can see, a third column has appeared in the properties window to show the new view targets. The screen size ratio has changed and the zoom level can change for certain devices. As soon as you choose an orthographic view target, you can't update the value of a view target or create new objects on the system. All you can do is update the third column, which is automatically there. For perspective, you have to manually create the columns in the properties window. Orthographic games already have the view targets populated. For each view target you need to update the camera, otherwise you will only see your game from the default view of 16:9. For each camera you have to browse to each camera object and change the managed ratio to the ratio you want to see. You can also see what the game will look like on portrait mode. Here, in the example I have on screen, you can see that when I change from landscape to portrait mode, some of the components move on the screen. As you can see in the example when I change from landscape to portrait, the bet button has changed by having the size increased, the text size increased, and it's also been moved. The same goes for the score button at the top of the screen. You can then launch the IDE to test. When you are wanting to test this, you need to go to your main CPP so you can force the view platform. For desktop web, this is usually kept at 16:9. Forcing the viewpoint is used more for mobile web, specifically different aspect ratio phones, and also using it in both landscape and portrait. There are two calls you can do, which are force view platform, where you can choose the platform you want to test, and force view target, where you can test very specific aspect ratios like 5:3, 9:16, etc. The name of the view platforms and view targets in Visual Studio are the same as the names in MobileMill in the properties window. So here I am going to pretend to using mobile web. If you press the debug button, it will acknowledge the command and force it to open in mobile web. As you can see now, as I play with the landscape and portrait mode as well as the aspect ratio, the game matches to go with it. So when I go to portrait, the game will go to match. When I go to landscape, it will go back to how it is in MobileMill, and when I change the size, it will scale correctly. This is useful as you can see what your game could look like on a mobile device. There are a few things you need to look out for when checking your game in different view targets. The first is that you might go through and set up your game in a different view target, such as 9:16, but you have to go back and set it back to the original view target of 16:9. If you don't do this, and if there isn't an override going back to the original, it would stay on the view target you have been setting the look of the game on, even if you have rotated the device back. When you're looking at your view targets, you will notice every item in 9:16, you will also have a corresponding item in 16:9. This is because the information in the value column is what you start up with. If you go to another orthographic aspect ratio, it will overwrite it, but it doesn't automatically go back to the original. To set up all the properties, you will need to go through all the view targets and add the position, scaling, rotation, etc. to the new column that is generated when you select the view target you wish to set up. You just need to make sure that you then go back and set each camera back to 16:9, as MobileMill will not remember to revert to the default. You never see the base design when you're running the client. You're always looking at one of the orthographic view targets, so you have to remember to set them both ways, even if you have the values set correctly in the volume column. If you generate a 9:16, you will also have to generate a 16:9 and copy the value over just to keep them exactly the same. But if you don't do that and flip between landscape and portrait and then flip back to landscape, it won't override. For the view targets, you have the view target inheritance and you can set fall throughs for other designs. For example, we have 16.9 as the master with all components in place and the same for 9.16, and for all the others, if nothing has specifically been overridden, it will automatically fall back to 9.16 or 16.9, depending on if the game is portrait or landscape. What this means is that in 5.3, all that will have changed is the camera aspect ratio, and button positioning won't change as it would fall through to the 16.9 setup. These fall-throughs are not automatic, so you'll have to create the fall-throughs for each project. Another thing that you'll have to look out for with view targets is paths. If you want to move the heads-up display out of view when transitioning to a bonus game, if you do it in code, it might not go the correct way in landscape as it does to portrait. So what you can do is set up paths with anchor points. For more on this, you can refer to the MobileMill user document. Some games may not need you to make anchor points and paths, as your HUD rollout can just be off the bottom of the screen and be edited in code. If you go to your correct view target with base design being used as your desktop view target and then go back to your orthographic view target for mobile web, you can make changes as it makes it easier for players to use on mobile devices. You can do this by choosing your view target and selecting the project camera in the design window. You can use the arrows on the component and move it around and then change the size in the properties window. You then have to go back and set everything back to the original position for the different view targets as mentioned earlier. You can override every property that exists. For example, you can change the texture of a graphic for very specific view targets. Force view target and force view platform will be very useful so you can test on appropriate different devices.